Everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Decision Desk HQ's Let Me Finish. Remember, we are here with you every Tuesday and Friday until election night, November 5th. But for now, let's get down to the polls and the hottest news of today. I'm Liberty Vittert, professor of the practice of data science at Washington University in St. Louis, and I am joined by Kirk Beto, the editor of Hotline, and Michael Pruser, a data analyst at Decision Desk HQ. So let's get to our first poll. It is hot off the presses. It is the Washington Post SCHAR poll, and this is among likely voters. So we have Trump winning in 2 of the swing states. At Arizona, he's at 49 and Harris at 46. And in North Carolina, he again leads Harris by 3 at 50, and Harris is at 47. Now onto the swing states that Harris leads. Harris leads in Georgia. She's at 51 to Trump's 47. She leads in Michigan at 49 to Trump's 47. She leads in Pennsylvania by 2 at 49 to Trump's 47. And Harris finally leads in Wisconsin at 50 to Trump's 47. And last but certainly not least, we have Nevada, the silver state, and they are dead tied in this poll. So I think, this poll really starts to beg the question of what is really happening now when we are so close to this election. Decision Desk HQ's model has Trump with a 52% chance of winning, and we've seen a lot of other modelers sort of move towards 538, for example, move towards Trump having an edge. It's a huge switch that we really haven't seen since it was a Trump-Biden ticket. Harris has really had the lead, and now we are seeing this switch to Trump. So, what is happening? Is this race so close that we're just like making a fuss? These modelers, Decision Desk HQ, Michael, I'm going to put you on the spot, is just making a fuss about these numbers, or is it too close to call? What is actually going on here?
I think you're right about making a fuss about these numbers. I think that, these numbers that we saw from the Washington Post poll, you could probably have shown them a month and a half ago, and they would have looked pretty normal then as well. There has been some recent state polling, some recent national polling that has moved things just a little bit in Trump's favor. But it doesn't take very much to go from a 51% Harris model to a 51% Trump model. 2% here, 3% there. This is just noise. I think we're just starved for something to change. We've been stuck in this mode now for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, ever since Harris came out of the gate, and we really haven't moved. And there's not a lot to talk about other than these polls that come out every day, and they're just not moving anywhere. Every number you said, Liberty, was between 47 and 51. And that's just not going to get us anywhere off the 50-50 line. So I think for the next 2 weeks, we're probably going to see more of these polls. You're going to see most models somewhere in the 50 to 55% range for one candidate or the other. And at the end of the day, what does that tell us? Squat. It doesn't tell us anything, right? Because this is still an election where you need a certain combination of states. One of those states has to be a Rust Belt state for both candidates. Harris probably needs at least 2. She'd love to have all 3 to lock this up. And that's really the bottom line here. So, it's nothing more than that.
I have to ask, though, we all know this. There's some pollsters that really try to do their best and release good polls. Then there's pollsters who are trying to get clicks for their own gain. And then obviously campaigns hire pollsters to have them say what they want them to say. So Kirk, does this help Trump? Regardless of whether it's actually true or not, or regardless of the margin of error of 51% Harris to 51% Trump, does this help or hurt him?
Well, I think you got to look at the kind of the cultural personality of the two parties here, because the tightening of the polls right now, or I guess tightening, half a percentage point here, 1 percentage point there, might be tightening, but the stagnation of the polls, we'll say, over the last few weeks, it's kind of been a Rorschach test of the personality of both parties. Republicans are always projecting confidence, even when they're losing, and Democrats, even when they're winning big, are wet in the bed everywhere. So with this really tight race here right now, Democrats are, of course, losing their minds over this right now. What we haven't seen quite yet is the recriminations at the highest level of the campaign. Last week, we had a lot of reports and scuttle from the lower levels of the party apparatus at the very local level of, we're not getting the resources we need in Philadelphia here. Harris isn't visiting enough of XYZ counties up here. She's not spending enough time courting these amount of voters here. We'll probably see that amplify over the next few days here as Democrats really just start to panic over this. Now, Republicans, on the other hand, they're looking at same polls that the Democrats are right now, but they're not in panic mode. The culture of the party is overconfidence all the time. You have Trump visiting the McDonald's yesterday in Pennsylvania before going to the Steeler game the night last night as well. It's not exactly like he's hitting the ground running on the campaign trail all the time. Democrats are reacting to this like they are behind. Harris has proudly said that she's still the underdog in this race, and she's running like it. And what's interesting is seeing what type of voters that she is targeting right now. We know the universe of those persuadable voters is a lot smaller this time around than previous elections. And today is kind of like the Never Trumper Day or the disaffected Republican Day, because she's doing a 3-state swing with former Rep. Liz Cheney right now, talking about how Trump is a danger to democracy and trying to give those maybe lapsed frustrated Republican voters, I guess is a better term, a permission structure to come over to the Democratic side of the aisle right now. You don't see that same type of outreach necessarily from Trump in the closing days.
Michael, do you feel though that, I mean, what I've been hearing and what everyone's has been saying is that, if you look at 2016 and even 2020, Trump was really far behind, relatively speaking. And now, actually, for the first time, he's ahead in the polling, or not necessarily even in the polling, but in the models. So, what I hear a lot of people saying is the Republicans are ecstatic because he's doing way better than everyone have thought he would. And the pollsters have been so off in 2016 and 2020. Does this mean he's going to win by a landslide because everybody's undercounting them? Or do you think that everybody's sort of accounted for 2016 and 2020 and is not undercounting him now?
Yeah, I don't think you can account for 16 and 20. I think, as Kirk said, Republicans are exuding this overconfidence because they're applying the same metric to the last 2 cycles. They went into 2016 and 2020 down in terms of polling. And in 2020, they were way down. We were talking about double digit in terms of seeing 10 and 11 polls. I think there was a Wisconsin poll that came out from the Washington Post just before Election Day that had Biden up 17 in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. It's a notoriously hard state to poll, but 17. I mean, that's crazy margins. So, this year, it's just everybody's in an unusual spot. I think Kirk is also right that Harris has been playing the underdog from day one. She came out and she's always said she's the underdog. All of the campaign fundraising emails have said we're behind, we're the underdog. Her actions in terms of the risk she was taking, we talked about last week, going on Fox News and doing an interview. It feels like she thinks she's behind. I think everybody recognizes the last 8 years polling was a bit of a mess. It undercounted Republicans. Everyone is assuming that that's going to happen again this year, but they shouldn't do that. That's not how polling is supposed to work. And we could very well see a swing toward Harris in terms of a polling error this year. I think that Trump has reason to be a little confident because I think if polling is correct, he probably wins. And if there's a polling error, then one of them will win. That gives him kind of a 2/3 chance if you're knocking out situations that way. So Republicans go into this as confident as I've ever seen them, and I think that it's probably justified, but you have to run through the tape here. You can't just sit on that. So Trump doing retail politics, it's a smart play. It plays to the middle, and it's a strength from him. We've seen him on The Apprentice. We've seen him doing other things where he pretended to be a worker at his hotels for, a couple of weeks and running through the gauntlet there. It's a smart play for him. It's a smart play for Harris to reach out. Now is the time to just play the middle and turn out voters as best you can.
I know we're talking about the post poll today here, but one thing I do want to note with this discussion as well is Stephen Shepard over at Politico had a really interesting column out yesterday asking where are the polls right now. While it might seem like to us that there's like a deluge of polls right now, Stephen really looked at the kind of lack of high quality polls in these swing states right now. That over the weekend we didn't have any of the The big five broadcasters didn't publish any new polls. We don't have anything new from the New York Times Siena College poll. We do have this Washington Post poll, which is great. But polling has just gotten so much more expensive right now. It's gotten so much more cumbersome to conduct the high quality level of polls that are demanded in this sort of very fractured political environment and reach the type of voters that were not reached in 16 and 20 right now. So while it does seem like we do have a lot of data going into this final stretch here, it's not necessarily the high quality of data, if that made sense, that we've seen at this stage in cycles past here right now. And I think for us reporters and us as analysts and pundits, we're kind of doing a lot of our analysis in a vacuum right now because, Michael, as you mentioned in your response, we're kind of just reacting to polls right now and maybe some fundraising numbers, but without a big ticket event that puts Harris and Trump on the same stage. If this was the 16 cycle, we'd be getting ready for a debate either this week or next week. We're not really without those. Even during the COVID year, we still had a second debate between Biden and Trump after he got out of the hospital with COVID. We're not having that this time around. So it's kind of just a slow crawl to the finish here right now without any of those big ticket events to kind of break up the monotony here.
Yeah, Michael, I'll give it to you. I'll give you credit. I remember after the first debate, you said there's not going to be another one. So there you go.
I mean, that was kind of obvious. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Take the credit. Okay, take it.
I'll take the W.
I can't.
Well, and there's a reason why the polls seem to be like shifting again ever so slightly in Trump's favor, because he hasn't had the same amount of eyeballs on him that he would if he and Harris were matched up on stage. I mean, yes, we all saw his comments about Arnold Palmer at the rally in Latrobe over the weekend. Yes, if you're very online, you see the footage of him serving in McDonald's and everything. But that's not the 55, 60 plus million people who are tuning into a debate who get to see it in real life. And that's why I think Harris has been changing her tune a little bit more to go directly at Trump in these closing days and draw that contrast, because they don't have the medium of television or streaming to do that for her with a debate.
I mean, how does she do that really effectively? David Plouffe says it's time to remind people of the stakes of this election and to really point out Trump's behavior. And there's a lot of arguments that there's only two types of voters in this country for this election, which is a pro-Trump or an anti-Trump vote, that there's really not a pro-Harris, rah-rah Harris vote. So, I mean, is there a way for her to create that in the next X amount of days until the election, or what should she focus on? Being anti-Trump or being like, here I am and defining myself as Harris?
I think I don't like the idea of being anti-Trump in order to court middle America voters. I think Biden has been doing that for many years now. He did that in 2020 successfully, and he was campaigning on that in 2024 as well. And he had turned up the rhetoric a little bit in terms of saving democracy and all of that. But I don't find the argument that Kamala Harris isn't Trump very persuasive. I'm not Donald Trump. You're not Donald Trump. In fact, every single person in the world isn't Donald Trump other than Donald Trump.
This is like the reverse I am Spartacus speech here.
Right. It seems lazy to me in terms of the argument. I think she needs to turn up the heat in terms of getting out on the campaign trail, doing as many events as she can, and just getting to the voters that she needs to turn them out. Persuasion for me is over right now. We're 2 weeks away, and we've discussed this a little bit about the early vote. We've already banked 15 million votes. We're going to bank another 60 million votes in 2 weeks before Election Day. You're out of time. Go get all that free local media that you can, and just go out there and just show up and do the events. And I think that's probably the best thing she can do right now.
Well, it's not like she doesn't have the resources to organize a really sophisticated get out the vote effort. I mean, just today it was confirmed that, across her fundraising entities over the last 3 months, she's raised $1 billion. That's $1 billion with a B. She has resources to be on air and make the most sophisticated get out the vote effort probably in human history if she wanted to. That's what she was doing a little bit this over the weekend, Michael. To your point, she was down in Atlanta for Souls to the Polls events. If she just filled her time for the next 2 weeks with stuff like that, organizing people to get out in, Bucks County, in Delco, in Pennsylvania, in the WOW counties up in Wisconsin. I mean, that's where you want to see her right now, because yes, it we're not at a persuasion part of the election anymore right now. Now we're in the mobilization phase over these final 15 days or so.
Well, with 15 days to go, we'll see if there's any surprises coming in the next 2 weeks, and we will be right here with you discussing them on Tuesdays and Fridays. And then, of course, we'll be right here with you on election night, November 5th, until every single vote is counted. I'm Liberty Vittert, professor of the practice of data science at Washington University in St. Louis. We have Kirk Beto, editor of Hotline, and Michael Kruser, data analyst at Decision Desk HQ. Thank you all so much for watching this week's Decision Desk HQ. Let me finish.